The movement of people from rural areas to urban locations has been a trend in most countries around the world, and that includes Zambia. The reason why people move vary from person to person. Most of the times it's in search of a better life. On today's News in Depth, we look at opportunities that arise out of urbanization, more especially that the trend has continued in the 21st century. Welcoming you to this week's News in Depth program, my name is Pennifer Nyirenda.
Mazina yanga ndine James Munyabwalya ninachokera ku Kitwe. Business ndechita ndechef ya kufwara ne sapato. Ichandetere ku Lusaka na isa munoko bati inche ndenaliko takwalisa na ma opportunities aya kusira ko business. But ku Lusaka na isa sangoko bati file chitika sana mulando ko bati inche ndi ali ba busy.
The story of James Walia is a regular experience for millions of people in most parts of the world. They move from rural areas to the cities in search of a better life. For some, it works out, but for others, it is a nightmare their wish was just a dream. This movement of people from rural areas to urban centers is among other definitions coined as urbanization.
Really, urbanization takes place when you have more and more people moving away from the rural setting and getting to live in cities and in towns. Historically, for a very long time, when people moved to commercial centers because perhaps of trade, and they decided to settle there. And then we had quite a big push when there was industrialization. People moved away from agriculture jobs and went to look for jobs in the cities, in urban centers, manufacturing, and all kind of jobs.
Today, urbanization is most rapid in the relatively less developed countries of the world, Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. This is caused by the economic, social and environmental transformation taking place in the two continents, pushing and pulling people into urban lives and livelihoods. It is projected that by 2050, the world's urban population will increase by more than 2/3, with nearly 90% of the growth taking place in the cities of Africa and Asia. In Zambia, projections put the population in the capital Lusaka to hit 4 million by the year 2025. The local Central Statistical Office shows that well over 2.8 million people in 2016 are residing within the boundaries of the Zambian capital city. A closer look at the population increment in Lusaka shows that the figure was much lower nearly 4 decades ago, standing at about 350,000 in 1969. At the close of 2015, the number of people in the city was slightly above 2.7 million. The increased population in the city has, however, caused a strain on social service delivery.
Lusaka is a unique case in the health sector. Lusaka has a population of 3.2 million people. And out of this 3.3 million people out of 3.3 million people, 3.1 are in Lusaka district. That places pressure on the health systems. The government therefore decided to upgrade the infrastructure to respond to the increased demand for health services in Lusaka district. If you look at the population in Matero alone, we're talking of in excess of 200,000 people. That is enough. That is more than a number of districts. The population in Matero is bigger than a number of districts. So Matero alone needs a hospital and a network of health centers. If you look at Chilenje, it also has in excess of 170,000 people. Again, that is a huge figure. Now, for us to provide health services adequately to such a huge population, we need adequate infrastructure to anchor the whole continuum of healthcare.
One obvious challenge caused by the huge population in urban areas has been accommodation, which has over the years resulted in a housing deficit. The shortage in decent housing has led to the increase in unplanned settlements, worsened by the high-priced decent houses. In the process, the poorer segments of the population build houses for themselves with little or no worry on the quality.
We have been working in different communities that in Zambia we generally call slums to improve housing for our people. As you know that moving from the 70s coming now, there's been a lot of rural-urban drift, and that this has put a lot of pressure on our towns where people are building around the cities.
From the time when this country became independent, we have experienced unprecedented increase in terms of population, especially when it comes to rural-urban drift. Lusaka has not been spared. We've had a number of challenges as a result. Of course, when you talk about population growth, it has impacts in several areas, and one of them is land.
Huge piles of uncollected garbage are a constant reminder of the challenges local authorities face, and added to that is non-availability or poor supply of water, among other services worsened by this increase in the population size.
Lusaka currently is faced with a situation where demand is higher than supply. The demand for Lusaka currently is standing at 420 million liters per day. But in terms of our production capacity, it's only standing at around 258 million liters per day. Then our network in terms of water infrastructure, we currently have more than somewhere around 2,000 kilometers of network or water pipes buried in the earth. Despite this, we still have a bit of challenges in terms of meeting the obligations that the consumers want. Therefore, we've been implementing a number of projects to try and just improve the water infrastructure around Lusaka.
Another indication of the increased population volumes in urban locations across Africa, in cities like Lagos, Johannesburg, Nairobi and Lusaka, is motor vehicle and human traffic. This calls for consistency in infrastructure upgrades.
We also need to have urban planning taking place, meaning providing infrastructure, providing services that will support the creation of jobs. And I think to have job creation in mind. So it's not just about the Lusaka City Council providing this physical facility and the other, but to be thinking about where are the jobs.
Much as the first impression on urbanization is visibly uninspiring, this rural-urban drift has opportunities for the growth of economies in the 21st century. In the first place, the high number of people presents a big market for goods and services. In addition, urbanization is a catalyst for the creation of not only more but better jobs. The employment benefits of urbanization is what themed the policy report issued by the Zambia Institute for Policy Analysis and Research, ZIPAR, in June of 2016. ZIPAR research fellow Gibson Masumbu states that the paper gives policy guidelines on how the challenge of urbanization can be an avenue for economic growth in Zambia.
ZIPAR, took it upon itself to sort of help government come up with policies that can help it create opportunities for jobs. And we called this program More and Better Jobs. And so we've been doing a lot of analytical work, looking at various aspects where we feel that government will need insights in terms of policy formulation. And so one of the areas that we identified was the issue of urbanization, which is basically people moving, from rural areas, going into the cities to look for jobs. And as a result, you find that there's pressure because the populations in the cities increase. So what can government do in order to create the opportunities for the people in urban areas? And hence this report, which we're calling job-rich urbanization.
He, however, hastened to admit that every citizen is entitled to basic rights that guarantee a better life.
The role of the councils become critical because the councils have to provide these services. The councils have to plan, to organize, where the people live. They have to plan for delivery of services, water, waste collection, sewerage system. Yeah, so it's basically now begins to touch on policy. What do we do now to ensure that the life of the people in urban areas does not deteriorate, is not worse off? How do we improve the housing conditions that the people in cities have to be subjected to?
The International Growth Center, IGC, also believes that citizens in urban areas deserve better, despite being caught in hardships caused by the high population. The IGC agrees that opportunities for robust economic growth are abundant in a country with a high populace.
So make the urban centers hubs for innovation, hubs for increased higher levels of productivity, creating decent jobs and paying those that participate in them, rewarding them meaningfully. I think we'll see greater growth for this country. And by the way, growth that is much more inclusive, because poverty will be coming down compared to the way has been the case. So we need to refocus and think about the urban sector as giving us opportunities for what we need as a country.
The report, which had inputs from ZIPAR, the International Growth Center, and the Just Jobs Network, outlines prospects that exist in Zambia for the creation of more and better jobs.
You realize that because there are more people working in the cities, they provide markets for goods and services that are being provided. And so that now creates opportunities for industries, for example, like manufacturing, which produce goods and services that should be consumed. So the cities now provide the opportunities for the markets for firms. If you talk about services like tourism, because the people available to work in these firms, they're able to provide the services that the people living in those cities need. Again, opportunities for industries like construction that will demand labor. All these industries are labor intensive, and the fact that the more people living in the cities, the opportunities to create the jobs for the people who live in these cities.
While the number of employed persons in agriculture has sharply declined from 71.4% to 48.9%, Zambia is said to be witnessing a shift, with more employment opportunities being found in services and industry between 2008 and 2014.
The report actually tries to highlight the fact that the dominance of agriculture in terms of employment has been declining over time. If you compare 2008 and 2014, the proportion of workers in the agriculture sector has reduced quite significantly. And the reason is that people are leaving the agriculture sector or agriculture work. They go into other non-farm activities, but these are basically in the informal sector. So although they're living agriculture related activities, they're not getting to anything better. is still the low productive work. So in terms of impact on the society, there's little or no impact because what they're doing is still low and productive. So the earnings are still low.
It has, however, been established that the majority rural-urban migrants have become an easy source of cheap labor engaged in domestic work or labor-intensive jobs.
Urbanization, or sometimes what you can refer to as rural-urban drift, brings in cheaper labor. Most of the times you find that most of the people that move from these rural areas coming into the urban areas are less qualified, and you find them doing a lot of these very manual kind of jobs. So in that instance, it provides cheap labor. However, it is one thing that you can really utilize when you look at it in that positive way. And again, you find that the people that move from the rural into urban, most of them are physically fit, and they don't even choose the kind of work they will do. So they will do any kind of work, and it's a plus maybe to someone who wants to cover a lot of area, let's say in terms of farming. If you're doing farming, because most of these will fall under the bracket of less than 500 kwacha in terms of salaries and so forth.
There is a call for effective land use in managing the huge population volumes.
Now, what happens is when you put more emphasis and more knowledge into things like agriculture, the diversification that you are talking about is now putting in more knowledge so that you can utilize small land or small space and produce into bulk. Now, what this happens is that it provides a system where a lot of people will be absorbed, and these are people that are moving from urban areas, from rural coming into urban. When you improve more and bring in a lot of information, a lot of skills, training in that, they'll be absorbed. And once they are absorbed, there'll be mass production. And wherever there is mass production, it means that if someone is just reasonable, they'll be able to pay these workers heftily.
Employment in the wholesale and retail trade sector is one joined by many who flock to urban centers, like James, a trader of clothes and shoes. The wholesale and retail sector expanded by 64%, from about 426,000 workers to nearly 700,000 between 2008 and 2014. In the transportation and storage sector, as well as the hospitality industry, employment expanded by 60% and 72% respectively. For the manufacturing industry, employment grew by 41% in the same period, but still employs only about 224,000 Zambians. With the number of formal job opportunities remaining relatively low, subsectors like agro-processing, construction, gemstone mining and processing, as well as copper value addition, are seen as potential areas for the creation of more jobs in line with the diversification drive.
There are clusters which have naturally sprung up. If you pass through Kalingalinga, for example, you've gone through Garden Compound, for example, you find all these people, doing these things. Go to them, see what is happening, what is hindering them from scaling up, so to speak. And maybe they need skills, provide those skills for them. Maybe they need business management capabilities, provide those capabilities, come up with interventions that help them to do that.
The negativity associated with urbanization, however, does not have a firm grip on Zambia, with a gross domestic product GDP growth rate in the year 2016 still expected to hit 3%.
We've seen significant, or rather a boost or surge in the investment levels in 2016, particularly from January to June. We've seen a surge by 20% compared to last year. Last year, around the same period, the first half of the year, we had about 1.5 billion investment pledges. This year, we've had 1.8 billion. So that in itself can be interpreted as an investor confidence measure. Secondly, we've also observed some stability in the currency in the last few weeks. The currency has been postulating at about $1 to 10 kwacha over the last few weeks. There's not been any surge or loss or ground lost in the currency. So I think that's a sign of confidence in the currency, because what would have happened if people had no confidence in the electoral process? There would have been capital flight. There would have been capital flight, but we've observed some stability. Yeah.
All right. Now, when it comes to the local businesses, do you think
The report recommends the inclusion of more young people into the labor market. The International Growth Center insists that the creation of jobs is not the work of government.
Government policymakers should work to create an environment which is supportive to business in general, whatever business. So if I wake up today to look for a job, I should find the environment conducive for me to do that job, whatever idea that I have. But having said that, of course, there are things that perhaps can be promoted.
Further, there are conflicting views on the management of rural areas as a way of dealing with the urbanization problem.
If we begin to support such opportunities in rural areas, that too can help people live within the rural areas. And one such area is developing the agriculture activities, making them more productive, making sure that people involved within agriculture activities are able to make more income and sustain themselves within those vicinities.
You have more people in the rural areas, and we believe that with services like electricity, products like the ones that we are offering, these rural communities can become more productive. And I think that's what we need for our country. The only way the economy is going to grow is the rural areas must be productive. They are already productive, but we are hoping that with the electricity, there can be value addition, for instance, to the crops that are grown in the rural areas. If we look at the quality of health and education, should I just say the social sector, the quality is also going to improve, because the electricity is an ingredient which makes or gives these rural communities more options.
For people like James, the improvement in the provision of certain services in Kitwe, his hometown, is what he dearly looks forward to.
Ifi chitika mu Lusaka nga chako atufire chitika Copper Belt na Zambia tetibe chimochene. Ama opportunities aya ba ku Lusaka nga chako bati yasangwa mu Kitwe. I think abantu tetubabe chimochene because ama business aya chitika mu Lusaka ala chitika fast than ku Copper Belt ku Kitwe, I mean. So nga chako bati ama opportunities aya mu Lusaka yasangwa ku Kitwe, then if into tufire chitika fast. Yes. So tunatemwa sana. I think we fingila iki ama development side chitika mu Lusaka yachitika ku Copper Belt. Kuchichawa sana.
James's dream is in line with the policy paper recommendation. The paper stresses that urban centers, other than those along the line of rail, should be industrialized for the creation of jobs, leading to the absorption of the unemployed from the rural areas in a particular province.
When we talk of urban centers, we are not just talking about the line of rail. Provincial headquarters, district centers, these are urban centers. So if you have those facilities being located there, that is good. They will create jobs there, and I think they will absorb some of the unemployed within the rural settings and leave the people who can do agriculture better to do it, and have agriculture become a better earning activity rather than the way it is. Most farmers actually don't earn much or they are actually producing at a loss. So yes, there is a case for value addition at all levels. I think the other point to make is that it will be much more difficult, actually, to promote the kind of industrialization we're talking about in rural settings, because they lack the density, they lack the facilities that we've been talking about. So these things are already here. Make Lusaka a more livable place, a more productive place. It will certainly have an impact on Chongwe, Luangwa, and the Eastern Province, the whole country, actually.
Emphasis is still placed on effective policy formulation and implementation in the management of urbanization towards the creation of more and better jobs.
In cities, that's where things happen. That's where there are, better opportunities, productive work. Industries would set up in the cities because that's where the markets are. People would want to live in cities because that's where better amenities are. Yeah. So if you talk about development, it essentially starts from the cities, and so that's why now the pressure is people, begin to rush to the cities to also participate, in the better life and better opportunities that they provide. Yeah. So starting point in the managing how the cities develop and evolve is key in ensuring that development is well managed and reaches out to as many people as possible.
Countries like China and India, which have large populations reaching billions, have recorded internal and international growth through effective harnessing of their hefty populations. Zambia is currently in the process of developing a national urbanization policy under the Ministry of Local Government and Housing, which is expected to facilitate the planning and management of urbanization countrywide. Among the expectations, the policy should address the needs of a growing population, which assuredly provides plenty of opportunities for social and economic advancements to impact the generations to come. Here is where we end this week's News in-Depth program. We've been looking at urbanization and opportunities for job and wealth creation in the 21st century. We do hope that you found the program informative. We urge you to make a date with us as we have another News in-Depth presentation next week at the very same time. From me, Penny Fanyarenda, it's goodbye and God bless you.